Now, I've got a guy in the wings that's getting a little concerned because he's always concerned if I get to introduce him. But I will tell you, behind every great team has an exceptional leader. And this is no question the six-pack plus one that he now represents. I present a man to you that needs no introduction. Our Aviation Branch Chief, Major General William K. Gayler. Bill.
Hey, thanks, sir. Appreciate you, Steve. Thank you. All right.
Blades.
Stay awake.
And advise load height during takeoff from the ground in 10-foot and 1-foot increments.
Oh, wow.
Middle clear. Forward now took operational, middle open.
LCT, check ground, bolt and ground.
Forward, PW operational. PW's off. Flight control, check personnel count flight day, detailed procedure.
Freedom movement in all 4 quadrants and no cross coupling, check the thrust. Start number 1, clear.
Clear on 1.
Positive horizon NG, starter on, resetting, ET's below, it's below 30, 38, advancing to idle. Initial number 2 flight, 1 and 2, clear to flight.
1, 2, clear flight.
Clear forward left right, brakes release.
Tailspin right, nose left.
Clear left right.
Clear for left, brake.
5017, clear for takeoff.
Alright, MFD's on.
MFD's on. Ground intentionally watch, no cross coupling, check the pedals. 2 clear to start.
Copy on here, 2 clear to start.
Good morning. Hey, that video was put together by a young captain at Fort Rucker. I thought he did a very good job with it. And I'll talk about why we wanted that particular video in a minute. But before I start, I would like to say thanks to the awardees and congratulations to you. That's pretty amazing that you've been singled out, recognized by your chains of command for excellence. Each of those awards are very special. The Sergeant Major Dunn, the Eisenhower Award, I think it was Sergeant Jack Brooks that you won. For those of you that don't know, The White House ornament this year is a U.S. Army helicopter. It is that Eisenhower helicopter, so go ahead, be proud of your branch. And if you're going to buy that ornament, we have an advance shipment at the Fort Rucker Museum. Come on down to Rucker and buy it, so we at least get about a 75-cent profit from that for us. Hey, I want to say thanks before I start, really, to also Quad A, to Bill and Janice, all the support people that make this happen, to the entire board. This is a first-class event. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Lieutenant General Mike Lundy for giving me the opportunity to host my 4th Quad A convention or summit, and it is an honor to be here with you as the branch chief. Ma'am, thank you very much for being here. You know, one of your slides, when you see how busy the branch is, and when you see where we are globally today, something kind of stuck out at me that we always remember, but we don't necessarily publicly state it. For every one of those deployed soldiers, those either on a PTDO deployed, returning from, or in the chute to do some other training mission to prepare to go, there's a family member sitting at home. There's children, wives, husbands, mothers, fathers, that all worry about those soldiers when they deploy. So I wanted to say thank you to the families for allowing your soldiers to do our nation's business. It is an incredible time in our global history, frankly, and I'd like a big round of applause for those family members. Okay, when thinking about, the theme of what I'm going to talk about, it's going to not necessarily mirror the theme of Quad A. What I wanted to talk about today is readiness, but in a slightly different way than most of us think of readiness. I want to talk about all the things we can do and have been working on to improve readiness that does not involve buying one single thing. We know we have to modernize, but we also can do a whole lot to fix ourselves before we modernize. And the reason I showed that video, the reason I wanted to see parts of that video on display, if you noticed, it takes an aircrew member from their beginning of their acculturation into the Army and aviation all the way through their lifespan in the Army. And it's more than one major command that has a play in our readiness. Fort Rucker is the starting point where it must be resourced to provide aircrew members to the field that they can be fine-tuned and honed into that combat capability that we see on display from each of our fielded units. Now, these are interesting times. These are interesting times that you may say, well, we have money. But anytime you have money, you also have a bunch of competing demands for that money. And you have things that must be done, decisions that must be made to better our capabilities. And the Army has done a good deal of that and made some very serious decisions about formation of Army Futures Command and where we're going to go with that, how to bring on capability. But anytime you have this opportunity to prioritize and to certainly weigh in with where we're going to put our money, we as leaders are really required to do a couple of things. We're required to do a lot of stuff, but there's two primary things that I think we have to do now more than ever. The first, you have to lead, and you can't lead unless you're competent. We have spent a whole lot of time regaining some warfighting capabilities and some competencies back at certain levels. So our first requirement is to lead. The second that any of us will do inside of a formation is to improve. And the only way to improve, frankly, is to change. It's to test, experiment, find innovative ways to do things differently. So we lead and we change. We lead change. And now more than ever, I think we have to stay very laser focused on that. The slide that's up is the only slide I will talk. And I'm going to talk it in terms of the branch priorities. You know, we have a priority, the number one priority of the branch right now, and this is from a Fort Rucker perspective, is to resource the institution and reform. And there's quite a bit of work that has been going on in the resourcing and reform arena. Our senior leaders made some very difficult decisions recently. When we know we have to grow capability back and we have to increase the throughput, the capacity at Fort Rucker, but we're challenged with some personnel and some funding and other things. In the past, the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army and the Under and the Vice made decisions to fund Fort Rucker to the level that it requires to increase the throughput out of Fort Rucker and to our fielded units. The Army made decisions to increase our force activity code, the designator that says Fort Rucker competes for parts the same as anybody else now. Where General Richardson mentioned the non-mission capable for supply rates, Fort Ruckers were about 4 times higher than everyone else's because they had a lower priority. Now that we've been given the same priority, we've driven those NMCS rates significantly lower, but you have to fund that or you cannot produce and will continue to fall behind. The Army made very tough decisions also with regard to the amount of aircraft we have at Rucker. We know we have a limfac of number of airframes in order to produce. It's a bit of a vicious cycle. If you don't have enough, you fly more on the ones you do have, which means you put more into scheduled maintenance, which means you consume parts at a higher rate. And if you don't have the funding and the parts available and the priority to get the parts, you'll fall behind. But our senior leaders have made a clear decision and a prioritization that you've got to resource the institution. We talk about reform a little bit as well. With regard to, there was no surprise. The last couple of years we talked about, we've had some personnel shortages. We've had a commercial airline industry that needs pilots. And all of our services have seen air crew members migrate out to the commercial world. Rucker was no exception. We had a historic attrition rate of about 7%. Today it's about 9.5%. That's concerning. Today, 28% of all warrant officers are retirement eligible. 43% of all warrant officer crew members are beyond 17 years. That's alarming. And we have to assess more, but we have to retain more in order for that not to be a risk. The Army made decisions about bonuses, and we give bonuses to targeted groups to keep folks in the Army. I'm not a fan of bonuses. I think bonuses are a short-term fix for an acute problem, but we've got to start looking at other ways to keep folks in the Army. One of the things we're doing is we have relooked the aviation career incentive pay, also known as flight pay. And for the non-aviators out here, it's called incentive pay for a reason. It's to prevent them from going to the airlines. So we probably need to look at it and adjust it a little bit. If we're having to throw bonus money to keep people, we need to look at paying folks for what their skills require. We've got a proposal up now through the building that it's being assessed, and it will increase the career incentive pay. One of the additional areas we're trying to do is called the incentive pay pro pay. So if you receive incentive pay to stay in the Army, but if you meet a significant milestone, a pilot in command, an instructor pilot, a test pilot, a TAC Ops rating, you receive a little extra money. And I think that's important. We've got to make it attractive to keep folks in. And there's many things we can do, and I'll talk about one at the end. Another area that we have adjusted is active federal service. We've now said, hey, if you are going to be, 75% of our warrant officers come from our enlisted ranks, and that's awesome. We were finding if you pick them too late, beyond 12 years, et cetera, after flight school, you only get 1.5 to 2 tours out of some people, and then you lose them. They retire. We can't afford to do that, so we've driven the federal service down. We've recommended and will go in effect the increase of the active duty service obligation as well. All of these are just levers to try to retain people. The single most important will probably be paying them what their skills require. That's a tough thing to do right now when money is a challenge and we have to prioritize for other things, but we've got to find ways to keep them. Another area that we've pursued, some of you have heard this before. So I get the honor of going to see nearly every Captain Career Course class. And there's about 80 in this classroom, obviously all captains. And I said, we've got to find ways to get warrant officer instructor pilots back out to the field. And you got a skilled force in your commissioned officers, but it's not incentivized for them to be an instructor. So I asked all these captains, hey, how many of you captains would like to be an instructor pilot? Nearly every hand went up. And I said, keep your hand up. I have a few qualifying questions. How many of you captains would like to be an instructor pilot and stay at Fort Rucker for 2 years to teach? Nearly every hand stayed up. I said, one more question. How many of you would like to be an IP, stay at Fort Rucker to teach, but I'm going to freeze you in grade for those 2 years, let you do your instructor pilot time, and then reinsert you into a year group that's 2 years behind your current year group? I thought hands would go down. Nearly every hand stayed up. And then I said, last question, how many of you would forego your graduate school opportunities to be an IP? Nearly every hand stayed up. What that told me, and as we've been querying a lot of these classes, this young group of officers wants to be expert at their branch. They don't want a transient time coming in for a little bit of platoon leader time, a little bit of company commander time, and then they're on staff. So we have been working a captain intermission program to say, let them do that. Take a couple of captains per class, put them on the flight line as instructor pilots, free up some warrant officer talent to go back to fill holes in the field. And I think that has great promise. Now, we can't do it for everybody. We can't have everybody as an IEP. We'd have nobody in command out in the field. So we have to measure that by year group. But my point is, we got to start thinking differently about how we manage talent and differently about how we increase expertise and capability back in our formations. So the second priority for Fort Rucker and the branch is the fact that we produce combat aircrew members. We do not produce pilots, or we do not produce mechanics. We produce combat aircrews. And when you take that thought, that was one of the drivers for the Aviation Warfighting Initiative, to make warfighting critical and fighting skills critical, not technical knowledge, but combat knowledge. We have rewritten nearly every doctrinal manual that we have. Probably most importantly will be the Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures Manual. And there's a reason for that. We want to show, I don't want someone to know the fundamentals of, I want them to know the fundamentals of, the why behind the operation, and the how to do it. Because if we don't start regaining collective warfighting skills, in 10 years there will be no intuition and no gut feel of senior leaders because they're not expert at it. You can't have that, hey, I sense that this is going to happen, if you haven't trained it to such a level that you're expert at it. So we've taken, and again, thank you for I think it was Brian, the SOP, the Aviation SOP. Fort Rucker spent a lot of time with you in the field to draft SOPs, not only tactical SOPs, but stands SOPs, maintenance SOPs, things to relieve some of the burden on the fielded force, but more importantly, to standardize how we do things. There was a powerful byproduct of us pushing out a battle book and an SOP. We gave it to all the lieutenants and warrant officers that were going through flight school, started training them on it. And after they finish flight school, they go to ALE. It's a couple of weeks of tactical kind of last-minute regreening before they go out to the field. We watch lieutenants and W1s plan, brief, rehearse. They go fly the mission in simulations. They come back and AAR it. And it's shocking how good they are because they understand an SOP. I've had 2 cab commanders already reach out from the field and say, hey, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Because we just got a crop of lieutenants that tactically are as good, if not better, than some of our captains. And imagine, the steep learning curve a lieutenant or a W1 gets when they go to their unit. Now, they're already at a higher level. Even with that same steep learning curve, you're able to teach them more and take them farther in a quicker period of time. And I think there's positive news there. We have rewritten and published, I should say, and sent to the field multiple training support packets to regain some skills at terrain flight, to regain some tactical skills. We've put a lot of those TSPs into play out at China Lake. We're at the NTC, the Eagle team, with Clint Cody, has been pushing to get more and more assets to fly against real threats. That's huge, because we learned in the first iteration, hey, we're not there. But after you train that TSP and do an iteration, we are getting very good much quicker. And I think that is critical as well. So, lots has been done to increase capability in the field. When we look at Fort Rucker and how we're trying to innovate and change things to produce a better product, we're looking at something called Aviator Training Next. So we went and saw what the Air Force was doing with their Pilot Training Next and the use of virtual reality simulators to get their new pilots up to a certain level faster. There was great promise there, so we said, okay, we're going to go find a way to do that for ourselves. We were given some money from AFC to purchase. We've got 30 virtual reality simulators coming to Fort Rucker. The intent is to produce a better product and to do it with faster throughput velocity in flight school. Now, how we're going to do it is we're running 3 test groups. We have one control group who is going to do it exactly like we do it today. The second group is going to get about 39 to 40 hours of virtual reality simulation before they go to the aircraft. The third group's going to get about 69 before they go to the flight line. And the reason is to increase the frequency and repetition in common base tasks so that they can see them over and over and over again before they ever get in the cockpit. Now, this simulations also has artificial intelligence and a cognitive assessment part to it. Imagine, if you're an IP, don't get concerned, I'm not trying to run you out of business, but there's an artificially intelligent instructor pilot as part of this that says, hey, you're climbing 200 feet slower per minute than you should. Increase collective forward cycling to achieve a 500 foot per minute rate of climb. If they're too fast, you are 15 knots too fast. So the point is the aviator's going to hear the standard for that task over and over and over again before they ever get to an aircraft. And any of us that remember your very first flight in a real aircraft, which was like day one, I'm sure my IP was brilliant. I don't have a damn clue what he was telling me because I was trying not to kill myself. But if they've heard that over and over again and their IP then says it, they're going to retain it and understand it. So we will get better, and we will get better faster. The cognitive assessment part of that is we want to keep everybody in a band of stress optimally aligned to their ability to do a task. So that cognitive piece says, hey, this aviator has got this task. It's pretty easy. They're only expending about 10, 12% of their RAM memory. So then it says, okay, well, I'll make it a little tougher on him. Automatically, it lowers the ceiling, increases the wind and turbulence, and then says, hey, we just peaked him back up to 47%, stress. Good, keep him in that band. So there's huge potential for this to produce a better aviator faster. All of our courses traditionally are proficiency-based. Generally speaking, proficiency-based, if they've done every task. If you can increase the frequency and repetition before they ever get to a motion simulator or a real aircraft, and we spend 1 hour less getting that person to proficiency in actual real blade time. 1 hour at $4,000 a flight hour for 1,300 students a year starts to add up to real money. But I don't care about the savings. We want to produce, of course we as an Army care, that's not what we're trying to do. I want a better product with increased throughput velocity at Fort Rucker to fill holes in the field. And if we can meet that, we're making progress. The third priority is modernize the branch. We have many people that are going to talk later about certain parts of future vertical lift and future tactical UAS. I will tell you, we are in a good spot. We're in a good spot because Army senior leaders, again, I'm very proud of decisions they've made to fund Army priorities, of which the aviation branch has several, and future vertical lift and tactical UAS and air-launched effects. We must have improved reach, protection, and lethality, and we're on a good path. And I'll not talk too much to that because I know other people will talk to it. Our ASC, or survivability equipment, it's critical that we get better, faster for more aircraft with less churn. We can't keep rotating stuff around units because we don't have enough. We've got to make tough choices, and our soldiers and their families deserve better. But I think we are in a good spot with modernization. Those decisions from Army senior leaders, we just finished a round of deep dives in the equipping peg, and in the training peg, and in the sustaining peg. We are all very well aligned. The last priority for the branch is positive leadership. I know that sounds strange as a priority, but imagine you have a generation of new soldiers coming into the Army who are incredibly talented, very patriotic to come into service. But they also have great ideas about short term. I'm going to do this for 3 to 4 years. I'll go try that for 3 to 4 years. I'm going to try another occupation for 3 to 4 years at a time when the economy is doing well and at a time when the airlines need pilots. We better give soldiers something to hook into. And it's not all about paying them differently. You better give them positive leadership to hook into. You got to motivate somebody to want to replace you. We meet with every pre-command course, lieutenant colonel, colonel, sergeant major, and senior warrants that come through. And I say something at the very end, very specifically targeted to that group. And what I tell them is, remember a couple of things. Have fun, but the most important thing you can do for your nation's security is as simple as a smile. Make a soldier look at you and say, I want to be that person. Because if you're not demonstrating positive leadership, I guarantee you they don't want to replace you. And positive smiling doesn't mean weakness. You know, I want them to, you in the worst condition you can possibly be in, you smile. Everybody else around you is going to suddenly smile. And that suck doesn't suck as bad. So, and I think that is hugely critical. And if you don't make it a priority and you just assume that you are that way, you might be wrong. Now, I'm going to close by saying thanks to all my good friends in the six-pack. We have had the best team of folks at every level knocking down serious problems for the branch. And there's no one person or one unit entity that does it. We talk weekly and sometimes several times a week across the six-pack. And we align messages in the sustaining, installation, training, and equipping lanes that is incredibly impressive. And we do it amongst friends. I think that's the thing that has made this the most fun. We're all close, we all understand each other's equities, and we work to reach a common ground, and then the first one that steps off message, we kill them. But we've never had to do that. Never had to do that. Hey, I would also like to say thanks to all the industry partners, all of the broader Army. This is critical for us, this opportunity to have dialogue, to kind of see what is within the realm of possible. Our nation is very fortunate to have this kind of activity. The last thank you is to a bunch of people that aren't here, and it's to the USAACE team. I don't think people realize that the Aviation Center of Excellence has a staff about the size of a cab staff. And we're flying 6+ cabs worth of aircraft every single day. Those staff members manage all the doctrine, organizational design, training, leader development, material solutions, all the professional military education. Every bit of that's done by a relatively small group of people. And they're the finest staff I've ever seen work, frankly. Now, one final thank you again to Lieutenant General Lundy for affording me the opportunity for 4 years to stand up here and give you an update. I say it jokingly, but it has been probably the funnest thing I do. And this job as the branch chief has been the most rewarding and most impactful, I think, that I've had in my career. It has been my honor. And Dave Francis, enjoy this next year. Above the best. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Major General Gayler to report to the X with Bill Harris. And I'm going to ask the lovely, lovely Michelle to please join me here on stage. I told you a long time ago that behind every great soldier is an even better woman. In this case, Bill married well above anything he deserves. And so we want to have Michelle here. Bill has no idea what's happening now. This is really, really good. Wherever you want to be, you are the star.
Appearing before a most arduous and discriminatory committee of tried and proven Army aviators and aviation patriots, be it known that William K. Gayler was tested and found worthy of special recognition for outstanding contributions to the community of Army aviation and is hereby inducted into the Gold Honorable Order of St. Michael. The Archangel St. Michael is the embodiment of courage, justice, and gallantry. So, too, the aforementioned individual embodies these qualities and represents excellence in aviation. Therefore, the President of the Army Aviation Association of America acknowledges that this patriot is due special honor and respect for now and posterity. Given under my hand this 15th day of April 2019, signed Stephen D. Munt, Brigadier General, U.S. Army retired, President of the Army Aviation Association of America. Congratulations.
Okay. Wow. That's the first time I've been able to catch Major General Bill Gayler off guard and surprise him. The second piece I managed to do is he said, yeah, after this event, he could be able to forget me, but now he's got a plaque that's got my name on it he's going to hang in his house.